We ain't coming no more. Since y'all know we here, give me my theme music.
We were both wrong about Colorado, though.
Dude, I'm got to be at the front of the line to eat that crow, man. It was legitimate to have questions about him because you don't know. Deion Sanders, he's never thrown a pass in Power 5.
Yeah.
You don't know how he's going to come out and play. I didn't really know a whole lot about TCU heading into this season. I know what happened, obviously, in the national title game, but, if you make it to the national title, you would assume it would have been pretty good. But, you're not expecting a guy who's never played Power 5 football to come in and break a school record in passing yards and put up 45 points on a runner-up national title team.
People forget, though, Alabama was looking at Shador. Yeah. He was, a 4-star quarterback. It's not like he went to the HBCU because he's, of that level of talent. Mm-hmm. It's because his dad was coaching there. Same thing with Travis Hunter, number 1 player in his country. Or in his class. That dude absolutely popped off.
How many plays? He played 110 plays yesterday?
Yeah, 115.
How do you do that? I just couldn't even imagine, cardio-wise, how you can be in that shit. And then not to mention how hot it was there.
Yeah.
And for him to make that much of an impact on offense and defense, man, you just don't find players like that anymore. You never see that.
And it's not like at receiver, he was just, catching screens, running after the catch. He was getting jump ball fades in the end zone, best on best, going up and getting it. And he, multiple third downs, third and longs, up the seam. He was one-on-one with the safety, going up and getting it. It was super impressive. And, dude, he's baiting quarterbacks to throw, what the number 1 read is. It's making them think it's open and then jumping on it. You don't see, young corners doing that at the college level. That, how much that rub route works all the time that they ran on the end zone.
Yeah. The thing about Colorado, man, is expectations for him. I was scared because I like Deion Sanders.
Yeah.
A lot of people, I'll talk bad about Colorado and people just instantly think I don't like Deion Sanders. That's not true, man. I really like Deion. I like what he did. I like how he came in and he set the tone early on with the press conference. We all remember what he was saying, basically telling people to leave the portal, and they're going to do things his way. So people saw that, and then expectations were just so high. People were saying they're going to win 7 to 8 games. I'm like, we got to hold on. Talent-wise, TCU was the much better, more talented team, top to bottom.
That's no doubt. I heard people saying that TCU is not a good team and stuff. They went to the playoffs last year. They were in the championship last year. Of course, they lost a lot of that talent, and that was older guys, but they're still a great football team. They're still great. Have 2 great coaches, offense and defensive coordinators, great coaches.
The thing about TCU, even if they go on and win 6 or 7 games this season, it doesn't even matter. Colorado last year would not come into this season without Deion and be competitive in that ballgame.
At all.
And that was my expectations for Colorado. I wanted them to just see them compete.
Yeah.
I wasn't expecting them to win games. I was expecting maybe, I think a 3 or 4 win season would have been good for Colorado. it's triple or quadruple the amount of wins they got last year. But I wanted to see them be competitive in these ball games. That's how I know they're trending in the right direction. So for them to come out and go on the road to get a win like that in Deion's first game, and the pressure, say what you want about Deion Sanders, he's been a guy who's always used to being in the spotlight.
Yeah, of course.
The pressure's on, you want to, the expectations were so high, you got to come in and you got to be able to, win some of these games, I think. I think winning that game takes a lot of pressure off him.
Yeah, they definitely delivered.
And the confidence they're going to have moving forward. They play, is it Nebraska next week? I know they play Nebraska, and that's a much more
I think they got
game.
Colorado State or some team like that. They play a couple cupcakes. They're definitely going to have a couple wins coming off this one.
Yeah, just them seeing they can beat TCU and then seeing Nebraska lose the way they did. Nebraska looks very winnable. There's some teams in the Pac-12 now that look very, very winnable. Colorado can make a bowl game, dude, and that would be absolutely insane. I didn't even think they could make 6 wins this
They
year.
got Washington, they got Oregon, they got USC, and they definitely looked impressive. And offensively, they can compete with anybody. I mean, Deion Sanders was making, even some of his incompletions were amazing balls. He only had like 9 incompletions on like 46 passes going into like late in the fourth quarter. And then put that drive together at the end of the game. Multiple 4th down conversions, 3rd and long conversions, making plays with his feet. But I still don't know if they are going to be able to compete with the best teams in the Pac-12 this year because of that defense.
Yeah, and I don't expect them to. Like I said, in those games, I want to see them. Even if they don't win those games, they got to be able to look competitive. They got to be able to look like they belong in the same field. That was, I think, their goal.
I definitely think they proved that, for sure. They came out and proved a lot of people wrong. I was saying they'd probably have like 4 or 5 wins. And like looking at their schedule, I still think that that's going to be the case. Like maybe 5, 6 wins, I'd say now. Just because that defense in the TCU game, they played a lot of man coverage. And, TCU offensively, as the game went on, they were starting to, figure that out and kind of have some plays prepared for that. And also, the biggest question mark on that defense is their front 7. They were getting ran up the middle by TCU. So whenever you're talking about Oregon, Washington, like you're high on Washington. They got a lot of returning players. A veteran O-line is a very crucial piece in college football if you want to win some big games. You got to have a good O-line and a good D-line. And, Colorado's D-line specifically didn't look great. But offensively, I think they're good enough to compete with anybody.
Staying Pac-12, I'm talking about Washington, man. They played a great game. I'm very high on the Washington team this year. Michael Penix, I really do think I posted on my Instagram, he's a sleeper Heisman pick. Washington's going to be a dangerous team. And I'm really looking forward to watching some Pac-12 football this year, which I'm not used to saying. I mean, I'm dog on the Pac-12 and everything. And I still hold true that the Pac-12, the top teams aren't competing with, the top SEC teams or anything like that. But they're going to be competitive with each other. And I think maybe this is one of those years, maybe one of those teams gets out, with only a loss, can sneak away into the playoffs. Oregon looked really good. USC, I mean, regardless of the opponent, I mean, they only gave up 14 points. That's a win for Lincoln Riley. Only going to start on that. And then, thinking of teams with high-powered offenses where defense might be the question mark. Tennessee looked really good.
Yeah, Tennessee looked great. Tennessee came out against Virginia and really popped off. The question marks that Tennessee had from last season going into this season, what are they going to do about their linebackers? What are they going to do about their D-line? And the front 7 against Virginia looked absolutely amazing. I don't think it's an understatement. And I was calling it last year that Tennessee was going to be a top 5 team in the country, like week 1, week 2. And people were thinking I was crazy, I was just riding on the hype train. But I'm really trying to be as unbiased as possible when I'm talking about Tennessee, because I don't want to look like a fool to all these commenters, you know what I'm saying? So, but with that being said, I definitely think that Tennessee is going to have an amazing chance against Georgia this year because that front 7 has been answered. It was like 6 pressures on the first 10 dropbacks for Virginia that we had with multiple sacks. We had over 10 tackles for losses before halftime or just into the 3rd quarter. Our defense was absolutely flying around. Last year, a big problem was missed tackles. We fixed that up, and then Jeremy Banks isn't playing linebacker anymore. I forget the young kid's name who replaced him, but he had an amazing fall camp.
Beasley, is that his name?
No, that's our Mike.
Okay.
He was a monster. He had like 12 tackles in the bowl game against Clemson last year. But it's a redshirt freshman or a redshirt sophomore, younger guy. Came in, had a great fall camp, and just absolutely dominated. Big Omar, number 0 on the D-line, popped off. But it's a different team every single year with every single team in college football. And last year, of course, we had Cedric Tillman, then he went down, and then Jalen Hyatt came in, and we also had Hendon Hooker. And Joe Milton, as athletic as he is, he missed on too many wide open throws. In big games against Georgia and Alabama, those are going to be misses that you can't get back.
Got to make those.
And just the crowd chanting Nico whenever he got in. I know Tennessee fans, this is the biggest prospect we've had in probably a decade. For a true freshman to be getting chants in his first game ever, week 1 of the season, that's basically unheard of. And I wouldn't be surprised to see if Joe Milton isn't playing, at his best, if fans start getting impatient and pushing the Nico train, and you just got to pump the brakes on that. And you know, of course, the coaches and stuff are going to know that, and I don't expect us to be in a situation where, you know, the coaches are like looking at that option. But the fans, you know, I wouldn't be surprised if they were pushing that. They just got to pump the brakes because he's still a true freshman. You know, there's only been like 1 or 2 true freshmen to ever start as an SEC quarterback. But I think their potential is great. You know, I want to see them continue to improve offensively, and like, you know, I want to see Joe Milton calm down a little bit. It looked like he was like a little bit antsy because there's so much hype around him preseason, and he hasn't really done anything production wise, and he knows that. And I'm not dogging Joe Milton. He's a great athlete, like Anthony Richardson was at Florida. You know, and that's why he's been getting all these comparisons and all these you know, these highlights and stuff. But he still hasn't proved much on the field, and so, you know, I just want to see him relax, calm down. He's got nothing to prove to these guys. If he goes out and does what he can do, he'll be fine.
I think one of the best things for Tennessee they got going on right now is just the confidence, and you can just tell compared to last season. I mean, this is just a different team coming out. You know, last season this was a Tennessee team that hasn't really been used to winning. You know, coming in the last year, and you saw that early on in the season when they played teams like Pitt. You know, if they would have played that same Pitt team later on in that same season, they would have absolutely dominated, won that game by 30, 40 points. But you know, winning that game against Pitt, I think, really set the stone that they can win these games, and they know they're a good team at that point. And I think that's carrying on to this season. They know they're a good team. They know what their ceiling is, and they know they can reach it. As long as they get that defense figured out, and you know, they can hit on those big plays consistently. I mean, Tennessee's going to be a playoff contending team, and there's no doubt about that. You talk about Tennessee. Obviously, I'm a big Georgia fan. I guess we'll talk a little bit about them as well. Well, it's fresh in my mind. I haven't really ranted about this yet. You know, a lot of people, obviously, the first half, offensively, not the best. Play calling was an issue. Execution was an issue. And it wasn't just one thing. I'm not blaming just Mike Bobo. I'm not blaming just Carson Beck. The offensive line didn't play the way I expected to when they're playing an FCS team. I mean, this is the Georgia Bulldogs we're talking about here. When you see Georgia line up against an FCS team, the size difference alone, you expect them to get a push on almost every single play.
Yeah, it shouldn't even be close.
And people can say all they want about, we struggle running the ball because our running back room is so depleted right now because of injury, but at the same time, I mean, that offensive line didn't show me anything where they look like they're anywhere close to where they were last year. And, you know, that was just frustrating to see, man. Like, Georgia's always been a staple when it comes to running the football, and they're just so dominant, and you can count on them week in and week out to run the football against whoever, and that just wasn't happening, so that was frustrating. Second half was much better, though. I was really impressed with the play calling. We got more aggressive. Carson Beck settled down, and there was a lot of questions about this offense heading into this season.
Yeah.
We have a lot of new receivers coming in, transferring in.
First-year offensive coordinator, first-year quarterback.
Yeah, new coordinator, new quarterback. But it's very easy, and as a Georgia fan, I'm guilty of this. Probably one of the worst ones when it comes to being too critical, overreacting, you know, in the moment. So I wasn't, you know, pleased at all with the way they were playing early on in that game. But, you know, looking back at it now, I mean, the second half, I saw the potential where this offense could be going, and they're just going to have to get better. You know, they fortunately, Georgia has a pretty easy schedule. I think it's pretty safe to accept that.
Yeah.
So they can get away, you know, with having some, you know, struggles in offense until they play Tennessee later on down the road.
Yeah, one of the things I was talking to somebody about last night, the thing with Georgia's schedule is like they're going to roll over everybody that they play until they play Tennessee. Tennessee has a pretty tough schedule before they play Georgia. So these good defensive coordinators, these good teams, they're going to figure out, you know, ways to stop, you know, some things that Tennessee likes to do. And Tennessee's going to see that stuff, you know, and they're going to have counters for it. Nobody's going to be able to stop what Georgia can do. Not going to be able to stop them lining up with, you know, 7 in the box, running the football, and then play action off that to Brock Bowers. Brock Bowers is going to break 7 tackles. You're not going to have to, you know, get off the script. So whenever they do play a good team like Tennessee, you know, that could be a lot of question marks, you know, in that game for their offense.
And that was something when you look back at the 2021 season when Georgia won their first national title. You know, they had a relatively easy schedule. Didn't really have to face a whole lot of adversity throughout the regular season, and then the first, you know, real test when they played Alabama in the SEC title game. I mean, they just got outplayed. They faced adversity and didn't handle it well. And I think adversity and playing tough teams during the season is a very important thing for that reason. I mean, you got to be able to, you know, you're not always going to dominate every single game. If the best team was to dominate every single game week in and week out, there'd be no point in watching football.
Yeah.
And that's what's so great about college football. Anybody can win on any given day.
Yeah,
so,
for sure. And when you're Georgia, you're always going to get every team's best.
Every team's best.
And when you've been winning for so long, it's hard to get up for, UT Martin.
Yeah.
Like, come on. Nobody wants to watch that.
I couldn't. Last year was a little bit different when the Kid State Mizzou blunder was happening and people were saying Georgia couldn't wake up for that game. The main thing that really frustrated me about yesterday's game is it's week 1. It doesn't really matter who your opponent is. If you can't get ready for a week 1 game, I mean, you've been practicing against your teammates and hitting your teammates for 7 months. Eventually, you're going to get to a point where you just want to play someone else. It doesn't matter if it's a middle school team.
That's a great point, dude. The hype around home game 1. You're right.
So I didn't think it was an issue when it comes to were they ready to play or not. I just think the execution was just not where it was at. That was the most concerning part to me.
Yeah, that's true.
So we'll see where Georgia goes from here on out. I'm not ready to start complaining and be concerned.
Carson Beck definitely looked like the game was moving at 100 miles an hour. Towards the second, Mike Bobo was trying to do his best to give him easy throws and easy reads. He was like a step behind on, some of the play action concepts they were doing. The screen game opened up for him, and that helped Carson Beck calm down a little bit. Like you were saying, they played better in the second half, but I don't think he's going to be that guy, man. Just off the eye test, bro. It's like you can look at stats, and he's 6'4", he can throw it 80 yards, but what's the eye test telling you? You know what I'm saying? Of course I think that they're going to stick with him because they don't even know who his backup is.
Yeah, Vandergrift, they played 3 quarterbacks yesterday. Vandergrift came in pretty early, and honestly, Kirby's not one to be known for putting in backup quarterbacks, and especially letting them, run the offense. Usually he'll put in a backup quarterback and just let him hand the ball off 50 times to 6-string running backs. But Vandergrift and Stockton came in, they were throwing the ball around. I think both of them looked pretty good. Vandergrift looked really good to me, man. He really did. He struggled, I think, during spring, and in the spring game he didn't look that good. Came in yesterday, I didn't see a negative play that Vandergrift had. Completed the one really good deep ball, had a couple good runs, but they were called back in his first drive. Threw a touchdown. I wonder if that's going to play a role, when you have a guy like Carson Beck who didn't play bad, but you have guys behind you that are that talented.
Yeah, it's a wake-up call for him.
Yeah, you're at that point, and you don't want him to start playing scared.
Yeah.
This guy behind me's playing good. He can take my spot. You don't want to be in that situation.
Yeah, but you had a good point there. Like you said, Vandergrift played. You thought he played all right. You didn't think he played good in the spring game. With these young quarterbacks, you can't judge them off one game. With Carson Beck, with how Vandergrift played. Joe Milton's different because he's an older guy, but also that Ohio State quarterback, first year starting for him, and. He did not look good in that game against Indiana, and Ohio State fans are, starting to say, this is what happens when you don't have a Justin Fields or C.J. Stroud, a complete game manager, gunslinging quarterback, and the talent all around them's there, but if you don't have an operator of that machine, it's not going to work out.
Yeah. There's a lot of teams, we talk about Georgia didn't play well in the first half. There are a lot of top teams that I think struggled a little bit more than people expected to. Ohio State being a prime example. Michigan didn't look as, they controlled the game, but they didn't dominate against Eastern Carolina.
Yeah.
There's a lot of just new stuff going around with college football. A lot of top teams with new players, Alabama, new quarterback, and I think Milroe played a pretty good game.
Milroe looked solid.
He numbers yards-wise, it's not going to be jaw-dropping, but he accounted for 5 touchdowns. You account for 5 touchdowns, that's a pretty good game.
He had some big plays, too. Some of his throws were on the money.
Mm-hmm.
He wasn't missing anything wide open.
And
that's the difference between what he was doing and what Joe Milton was doing. And that's, my biggest concern with Joe Milton is, you can't be missing those throws at the top level as a quarterback. It's one thing, being late, not really seeing it, the game's moving fast, you make mistakes, but if you're missing on the wide open ones, that's going to be cause for some issues.
Absolutely. And it doesn't, I know, I saw a little bit of the first half of that game, the Tennessee game. I saw where Mel Keaton had that one drop. That was probably Joe Milton's best throw of the day.
Yeah, it was.
That deep ball.
And Tennessee fans will be quick to post that, to highlight Joe Milton. Don't get me wrong, it was a great ball. He threw it 85 yards in the air. But, there was a lot of those throws that he missed that he could have given that receiver a chance to make up for. He threw it 5 yards over his head. And I also had a pretty bold prediction about North Carolina, South Carolina. I was telling everybody that would listen, North Carolina was going to beat them pretty handily. And like in my opinion, I think South Carolina played a lot better than I expected them to. Last year, Spencer Rattler, I called him Spencer Rattled because yes, he was getting pressured a lot because his O-line's bad, but when he got pressured, he was so rattled, didn't know where to go with the ball, making tons of mistakes. And, he just looked like a freshman quarterback out there, running around on varsity for the first time. But in this game, Spencer Rattler looked a lot better. He looked a lot better. He wasn't the reason that, some of those drives ended. Their O-line is still pitiful.
They finished with negative yards rushing.
Well, but they include Spencer Rattler's sacks.
Including the sacks, but yeah, I mean, I think what hurt them the most is not being able to run the ball. Absolutely no push from that offensive line.
Dude, that's where it all starts. If you don't have an O-line, you can't run what you want to run.
Yeah.
You can't stick to what the game plan that you have. You got to alter it because your O-line's not getting any push, and they're not protecting the quarterback. So what are you going to run? Quick stuff to the outside. Get the screen games going. But that allows the defense to lock in on that stuff. And then they're sending the pressure because they know you can only run so many things. But that O-line's a problem. Defensively, I thought that they made some decent plays. Like their front seven's pretty solid. You were talking about that. They got a bunch of returning guys. Defensively they're going to be a lot better. I thought their linebacker core did look really solid. That's one thing that I always look at on a defense. The linebacker core and the D-line, that's going to tell you a lot of times how good that team is.
Yeah. And North Carolina's a great offense led by Drake May. There was a lot of people that were saying that was going to be a shootout kind of game between Rattler and Drake May. It turned out to really not be like that, though. I mean, like you said, the defenses on both sides really stepped up and played a good game, which I think was unexpected. So I think that's if you're going to take a positive on either side, whether you won or lost that game, I mean, I feel like defenses, they definitely stepped up, and I think they played better than what a lot of people thought they were going to do.
Yeah, and also it being early in the season, defenses always catch on quicker. Less stuff to install. Offensively, you got to start to gel. You're figuring out what works for this team, play calling wise, personnel wise. So you're still figuring things out offensively. Even the best offenses. Georgia last year, one of the most efficient offenses in the game. They didn't play so great. Same thing with Tennessee. We didn't convert on a couple fourth downs, didn't convert on a couple third downs that we should have converted on, but that's just how it is.